welcome very quickly Rajiv Talwar and Jose Dominic. Today's episode is on the backbone of economic Kerala, a sector that provides employment and brings in tons of money to the state. Today's episode is on tourism. Kerala is a traveler's paradise. The world knows the state so well. I was surprised when about a year ago, or less than a year ago, the BBC in its hourly news bulletins, the weather bulletins at the end of the news would start talking about Kerala. Till about a year ago, they had never mentioned Kerala. They would talk of South India, they would talk of Bombay or Chennai and Sri Lanka and Colombo, but never about Kerala. Even today, the BBC news bulletin, the weather bulletin at 12, at 1, carried Kerala. So Kerala has come to worldwide attention. What brought Kerala to this worldwide attention? And I would say, my answer is that it is tourism in Kerala. The way Kerala has sold God's own country is the one that has brought this worldwide renown for Kerala. What has transformed Kerala into this global tourist destination? Of course, it's its natural beauty, the waterways, the hills, the mountains, the tea gardens, the houseboats, the hills, Munnar, Wayanad. I think the list is endless. But all these were always there for centuries, for decades. They were all part of Kerala, but Kerala came into the tourist destination map only about 40 years ago in the 1980s. So what happened in the 80s that transformed a state which always had a lot of natural beauty into a global tourist destination? What changed in the 1980s? Perhaps the question should be reframed a little bit. So I'll reframe it thus. It is not what changed the image of Kerala. I would reframe the question as, in the 1980s, who changed the focus on Kerala and brought focus to Kerala as a tourist heaven? The answer is before us today. The answer is with us today. It is Sri Jose Dominic, Doyen of the tourism industry in Kerala and the co-founder of the Casino Group of Hotels, known for about a decade and a half as the Casino Group of Hotels, but it is now known as CGH Earth. And he'll explain to you why it's called CGH Earth. I think it stands for maybe it's better to leave him to explain it. So welcome, viewers. As always, please feel free to key in your questions, and I'll ask Sri Dominic to answer them as time permits. May I welcome you, Mr. Jose Dominic, to All That's Kerala chat along the backwaters. It's a pleasure, it's an honor to have you with us this evening. Let me begin by saying that tourism in India till the 1980s mainly meant the tourist triangle, Delhi, Agra, Bombay. You broke that triangular monopoly of tourism in India and brought Kerala in as a tourist destination, a global one. You're undoubtedly the one person who put Kerala on the global tourism map with the work you first did in Bangaram, and then later what you did at the Spice Village in Munnar, and of course the houseboats, the Kumaragam Lake Resort, then Maradi Kulam, and so on. So starting from just one hotel which your father had built, the Casino Hotel, which of course was in the picturesque Wellington Island in Cochin, you took the Casino Group, but Kerala itself, into a different stratospheric height of tourism. One of the factors of this growth, to quote you, Mr. Jose Dominic, you said that Kerala has been green, but what kept Kerala green? And let me quote you, you said, red flags kept Kerala green. That seems a contradiction. Can I begin this conversation by asking you, what did you mean when you told me the other day that red flags kept Kerala green?
Yes, let me thank you, Mr. MP Joseph. Hi, Rajiv Talwar, and I'm glad to be on this program. But first, let me begin with a small correction that we asked what happened in the 80s. Then you changed it to who made it happen. It is not Jose Dominic, but it was the small entrepreneurs of Kerala who made the change. Starting from that, 80s is a period you said, and let me go back little before that. That red kept Kerala green is a statement I've always been making, and sometimes the red says it's a backhanded slap. But really, what happened is that when you go back a little more, at independent India, Kerala had a period of turmoil, and red was very visible. And we had the first communist government under E.M.S. Namboodiripad, and the image that came out from Kerala was there is trade unionism is rife, and as a result, two things happened. One, foreign direct investment refused to come. Therefore, I say the smokestacks were kept out. As a consequence of that, what happened in Kerala? The Malayali mother told his boy child and his girl child also, study well so that you can go away. And they did both. They studied well and they went away to other Indian cities at beginning, to around the world, and then in historic numbers to the Gulf. And in fact, much later, in another event which happened in Kerala called Emerging Kerala, the then Chief Minister's keynote address said the two change makers of Kerala were two. One, the phenomenon of NRK, and the other is tourism. And what did the NRK do? Brought in remittances into the state. What did tourism do? It created entrepreneurs and it created enterprises and created jobs. I think that is the one. How did it happen? And I think this is what I think is the biggest lesson from what tourism tells us, that small entrepreneurs did what they could, which is small, in a manner which they knew, which is local. And to their credit, we could say that indigenous and small became world class. And that was a big achievement.
Mr. Jose Dominic, you also said, keeping on the topic of red keeping Kerala green, you also believe that the left communist governments in Kerala and even the others were scared to treat tourism as a serious department because it was seen as a luxury, capitalist, and bourgeoisie. Tourism was an embarrassment to the state government, but that has changed now. Is that true to a great extent, that tourism was given to the smaller coalition partners in government, and officers who are not very close to the government were given posts in the tourism department at once upon a time? But it's all changed now. Is that true to a great extent?
All that has changed. All that completely changed. I remember a time, I would not call them left and right governments, I would call them left and left of left governments, which Kerala has had. And what has changed is that the tourism has suddenly become, which was at one stage was considered an embarrassment, luxury, capitalist, and bourgeois. It's suddenly become a driver of the economy. It has become creator of jobs and earnings for the state. If there's one industry which Kerala can say that in this sector we have done better or succeeded, it is tourism. So what has changed is that from the weaker coalition partner being given this portfolio, now the stronger coalition partner gets this portfolio. Bureaucrats who were out of power have landed up in this department. Now only bureaucrats in favor landed up here. Everything has changed. So suddenly now tourism appears to be Kerala. It appears to be Kerala's savior. Kerala's way of telling the world that we too can. And but
it is also, Jose Dominic, one of the largest job creators in Kerala, isn't it? It is
currently the statistics will say that. In fact, just let me that almost 15 lakhs people directly employed in the sector, and many livelihood enterprises are being created linkages to farm, linkages to cultural industries, so many other linkages. And it's everywhere, in rural Kerala, in city Kerala, in faraway Kerala, in lakes and beaches. Everywhere it is there. And this is something that brought about a huge change to the attitude that at one time it was said that the weakness of Kerala's weakness of Kerala was the lack of entrepreneurs. Tourism proved that that is a myth. In fact, on the contrary, tourism showed that Kerala has sprung up and entrepreneurs on all kinds. And there are people who in disruptive innovators, from houseboats to resorts, which take a different model. And what emerged, as Kerala was a unique model, what emerged a unique model in tourism too, which we can call the Kerala model, which had at its heart environment, community, and local. In other words, the ingredients of responsible tourism. In responsible tourism, which I think is the way that the world sees tourism as an inspiration, aspiration, Kerala now probably can say we have both local, national, and global leadership. And it did not come from because anything imported, neither capital nor knowledge imported. It came from, there's no rocket science that what we did ordinarily became extraordinary. Every day in Kerala can be magic.
You have, Sir George Dominic, you have one of the criticism about Kerala is that this state does not have industries. That there are too many labor disputes here, and that labor disputes prevent industries from coming in. But the absence of chimney stacks, as you call it, the lack of industrialization, on the one hand, has kept Kerala green, and that has been good for tourism. Isn't that so? So it is, even though industries have become less here, tourism has thrived. So isn't that an advantage that we have had in spite of the labor issues that the state has had?
It is true. That's why I said that red Kerala green was, in a sense, a backhanded slap. But by keeping industrialization low and slow, we had the environment preserved, kept Kerala green. As a consequence, Kerala was seen as a state for people to come to, a great place to live in. And in a great place to live in is a great place to visit. And Kerala's other achievement, I think, in the early years is our investments in healthcare, in education, in institutions of democracy, all of which created a destination, which I will use a term here. I borrow from a researcher called Peter Aderhold. I use a term here, which will say that the alert independent traveler. And he's a new animal, which is emerging, and for whom travel was a voyage of discovery. And this was in stark contrast with the traditional traveler, who thrived in the times of the Golden Triangle, which you refer to, Delhi, Agra, Jaipur, that is represented what you expected, quintessential India. The Maharaja with the turban, the elephant, the palace. And Kerala, on the other hand, was modern India, village India, everyday India. And that the ordinary can also be extraordinary with the Kerala story.
You spoke of entrepreneurship having come into Kerala because of tourism, and people showed that they had a great deal of enterprise in them, even though it may not be for setting up multi-crore industries. But in the case of tourism, there was a lot of local entrepreneurship. Did you discover your own entrepreneurship through tourism? You're one of the biggest entrepreneurs in Kerala today.
So when we ventured into, my father had started a hotel way back in 1957, which was a Cochin hotel. I was a chartered accountant, and who wanted to be there, and then by my father's persuasion, I came and joined him in 1978. At that time, the number of tourists, India's share, Kerala's share in Indian tourism arrivals was about 1.3%. In the mid 80s or early 80s, 25,000 foreign tourists came to Kerala. It was, as an industry, not relevant. And but the opportunity of tourism as an enterprise, the economic opportunity, was seized by what I again repeat, the same term, but I think that's what really happened, is that small entrepreneurs did what they could, which is small, in a manner which they knew which is local, and yet making it world class. And that really is the Kerala story. World class and recognized globally. Even the UNDP has given the award to Kerala called the Ulysses Award for responsible tourism, for whereby when I say the alert independent traveler, who is he? To understand him, we must look at his opposite, which is a sun, sand, surf traveler. Again, word I borrow from Peter Adderhold. The sun, sand, surf traveler is one who wants everything perfect. 27 degrees Celsius water, white sand, perfect hotel, good coffee, best food and best service. Nothing else matters. The hell with everything else. In stark contrast to him was the other who says everything else matters. He wants to know how people live there. What was their activity? What are their aspirations? What are their fears? What are their pain? And all that is part of the journey of tourism. And this was the kind of traveler which Kerala could attract. And that was the beginning what you say in the 80s, 25 years. Kerala's growth from being a Bimaru state, using the Hindi term, to become the best performing state as far as tourism is concerned.
The alert independent traveler is a traveler who comes to Kerala. Is that? But what brings him here? Is it the uniqueness of Kerala that brought tourists here? The Tanima, the Kerala Tanima that you mentioned, not today, but in a conversation we had earlier. I think you mentioned three essentials: the architecture of Kerala, the food of Kerala, and the natural beauty of Kerala, the green. Shashi Tharoor once said that Kerala has some 1 dozen varieties of green: the green of the coconut tree, the green of the mango tree, the green of the paddy, the green of the rubber plantations, the green of the tea estates, the green of the grass. He listed out about a dozen green. So is it this green, the food and the architecture that brings the alert, independent traveler to the state?
All of that, but let me just differentiate it slightly. And I think the best term to differentiate is what is inherently Kerala, or the Malayalam term, Tanima. Kerala is a Tanima. That is what the uniqueness, or what is inherently here. And that becomes a shared experience. And there are many other states which are green and greener, oceans and backwaters. While these are strong ingredients of our travel, but I think it is a people element and the magic of every day. When I say that, is that it's modern India. It is where there is, in a sense, going back to there, I would say, read in a positive way, egalitarian society, people who have the better paid, less discrimination, and all of that helped to create. And I think the dividend from all of that, it was tourism of a kind that did not exist in India before, of a kind which allowed people to travel by themselves to go and live in a remote little home, a homestay, in a farm, far away from it all. And it was all like in developed countries and unseen India. You take India itself, Delhi or Bombay or Bangalore, great places, fantastic facilities, but you go far away into rural, there's a sense of fear of whether place will be clean enough, neat enough, safe enough. All those fears don't exist in our state. Because there is right across, you will have certain amount of similarity, of equity of resources, of people, clean, much more cleaner, and finally, absolutely safer.
But things have changed, haven't they, Mr. Dominic? The 2018 Kerala floods, the 2019 floods, and 2020 COVID has hit the Kerala tourism very badly. How do you see Kerala rebooting tourism after these 2018, 2019, and the disaster of 2020, the COVID disaster? How would you see Kerala reboot tourism rebooting itself in 2021?
Let me add one more calamity to the three that you described. At the end, at the end of the earlier government, there was a policy on alcohol which came out, which said that Kerala can have bar license only in 5-star hotels. That was a serious knock on tourism. Our MICE meetings and incentive travel ceased to exist, and that is when that was the first calamity. Luckily, that was reversed, and then we had the 2018, the big flood, which at that time they said it's a once in 100-year event. After that event, and Kerala appealed to the world, help Kerala. Kerala is in distress. So very reluctantly will people come to a distressed destination. So then we had the 2019. Again, we had a catastrophic monsoon, and in between all this, there was Nipah. And one small statistic I would like to mention here before COVID is that the tourism department published some statistics in January 2020, which said that October 2019, November 2019, December, and January 2020, Kerala's numbers in terms of arrivals were the highest and the best in our history. It was a springback despite all these calamities. So it really showed that the resilience of the destination and the resilience more of the people, the entrepreneurs, who could, despite having received such a big knock, they were back on their feet in even more strength. We hope that, of course, the COVID calamity is bigger than all of that to put together. And we believe, and I think there is the strength that Kerala can have, that we can spring back again.
Speaking of COVID, you divided COVID into three phases: BC, DC, and PC, if I remember right. Can you explain what this BC, DC, and PC of COVID is?
In that terminology, BC is before COVID, DC during COVID, and PC post-COVID, which is what we are hoping for. Before COVID, the story of Kerala is a remarkable story. During COVID, also a remarkable story. I think the actions that Kerala could take to arrest and contain the virus got worldwide attention. Therefore, during COVID actions, which meant there was the conflict between life and livelihood. Livelihood paid a very, very heavy price. Tourism was the first hit, worst hit, and longest hit. The industry fell literally off the cliff. It did not slide down, when we dropped to zero. And that was what has happened. And from that is now the struggle to get back on the feet, and then, using this term, to hope that we can reboot God's own country to another level. I think the biggest advantage which comes from calamities, or to use a calamity, is that people are then now prepared for transformational change. Things that we could not do in the past now seem possible. Action that we can take. So the aspiration is that for now we realize that for Kerala's growth, survival, or revival, is we have to become the cleanest, the greenest, and the healthiest among the destinations of the world. And I'm sure that we have what it takes to get there.
You see, to me, somebody comes to Kerala only post-COVID, PC, if they are sure that it is tourist safe. How do you make Kerala tourist safe? How do you give confidence to national and international travelers that Kerala is a COVID safe destination? One thing I would say is for the government to give priority vaccination free of cost to those in the tourism sector. But you must have other ideas as well. How do you make the traveler feel that Kerala is COVID safe? That is a COVID safe destination.
I think it's the sense of confidence, of safety, will not come from just the action during DC, but the history of the state on how we've been able to manage other calamities, whether the flood or even the Nipah. And now during COVID times, the industry is so organized. And while, of course, across the world, we have now introduced COVID protocols, and everybody does that. But the sense of confidence with one approaches the state about, thanks to, let us say, the high human development factor that Kerala has, the confidence that can come. You take a taxi in Kerala, and you take taxi anywhere else in the world, anywhere else in India. You see how the vehicle is, the driver's attitude, and there's a world of difference which is acknowledged. Even hotels, small hotels, Kerala hotels are not the 5-star, the big 500-room hotels. Now here, let me just narrate a small story, little bit. I'm a member of the Ecotourism Society of India. We organize workshops across the country. And before COVID time, and during BC, we organized one in Goa. And the Goa participants were very active, young tour operators, young hoteliers, restaurateurs, all came in there and participated there. Activists, really. And I remember one seeing me, and maybe another person from Kerala there. He in his talk, he said, some facts he revealed. Goa's population is 14 lakhs. Goa's footfall is 64 lakhs. And then he said, look at these people from Kerala. Their red flag meant that the FDI did not come. But in our state, we laid out the red carpet for investors, and they came in big numbers. They made the 500-room and 5-star hotels, which displays the biggest flags, brand flags of the world. Now look at the situation, is that in Kerala, the entrepreneurs who started these small little hotels, they are the owners, the managers, and they're directing the way things happen. We are happy for what happened in Kerala, but in Goa, but we got jobs as waiters and cooks and drivers in the 5-star hotel. I was just comparing the two, that how the Kerala, thanks to the investors not coming in and local investors have to make up for it. And the other case, when outsiders come and invest, not necessarily represent advantaged local population, is what the story was.